Hi, everyone. My name is Josh Anway. I'm the worship director here at University Covenant Church, as I already actually said earlier in the service. Great, cool. Yeah. Okay, well, here we are. One of the things about this new sermon series, it's on vocation, it's on calling, it's on this idea of what God's plan is for my life. And I don't know about you, but what do you think of when we hear those words? When we're looking for a job or when we're thinking about if we're living the right way, we kind of think or wish that God was able to communicate that sort of plan to us so that we knew exactly that we were going in the one direction that God had for us. Where does God want us to go or to be in order to really get to be within God's will? But I think like the sign over here implies, it's kind of a mistake to think about it as just one particular path. I don't think we necessarily have to go anywhere. We might, but I think to follow God's call for our lives, it turns out that we don't all have to become a pastor or a missionary or one of the heroes in the Bible that we read about, or even have the perfect answer about what job it is we are called to do for the rest of our lives. Instead, what we find is that God is calling us to be faithful every day in our workplaces, in our living situations, and this is what we're exploring in our series. But even better than just talking about it, we're also getting the sense that we can hear from our own congregation, because all of you are living out your calling in one way or another, however fully it actually is. There's so much opportunity for us to be doing that, and we have examples of it here. And so we get to see how God's light shines in those contexts, all these different places, whether it's a teacher or college or anything like that, and how it might seem kind of mundane, but beauty is actually very present in this reality, in this place where we are at. So we are fortunate enough today to learn from someone who lives out her calling as a college student. And I bet her apartment probably actually looks a little better than this. Maybe, we can hope. But it's kind of cool for us to have this kind of backdrop for Allison's life. So I'd like to introduce you to Allison, senior at UC Davis.
My apartment looks pretty close to this, although I think we could use a bed of flowers surrounding the living room. I think that would be a nice touch. All right, hi, my name is Allison. I am a senior at Davis, and I've been attending Catalyst, which is the college ministry here at UCC, for the last 4 years. It's been a very rewarding experience. But my Christian path hasn't always been very rewarding, but I have to put credit where credit is due. I did have a childhood that looked right. Thanks to my parents, I did go to church, grew up in my home church, and even though maybe I wasn't as athletic or coordinated as my parents would have hoped, I think I was on the right track, and I was growing up to meet every expectation that a good Christian daughter should meet. However, around middle school, I began to pride myself on my critical eye, and I started to kind of change my definition of what it meant to be a Christian daughter. And I started to think that maybe it looked different than what my parents were telling me. I actually pretty much rejected Christianity, saw it as my parents' religion, and that faith was really just a cop-out. And this relationship with God, since I personally did not have one, that must mean that everyone who said they have a relationship with God was actually just lonely and empty and didn't know how to make real connections. So church turned into something I just did on Sundays. And as I entered high school, I started to try and take control of my life, and the way that looked was just compartmentalizing all the different aspects of my life. So I'd prioritize, and if I thought if I put my time just right, then I could achieve happiness and success outside of the Christian limitations and expectations that I thought were holding me down from what my life could really be. So I spent time with family and friends and did well in school and did not do sports, but went to church every hour and a half on Sunday, and I thought I was on the way to real happiness. But after every year, at the end of the school year, I'd look back and just feel really less than satisfied. So what I'd do is I'd, plan, reevaluate, reprioritize, and pretty much start my next year the same way. And then I started my freshman year of college. I was, finally out of high school. And after those decisions I've made and the priorities I made, I really didn't want to look back at high school at all. I just wanted to close that chapter of my life because I was really unhappy in it. And so I was here at Davis, and I was going to be a doctor. And even though I hated math and I thought cell biology was boring, that was a hotshot major on campus. So I was like, well, that's what I should do. And so I kind of approached college the same way I approached high school, thinking I'd find happiness. So I compartmentalized. So faith had really little priority in my day-to-day life. New things like body image and impressing new friends and having a well-respected science major and impressive career goals on campus became much more important to me. And shocker, even with these new things, at the end of my freshman year, I felt lonely and empty and really less than satisfied. My schedule was completely filled, but I was not fulfilled. So I think even then, if I looked deep down, I would have known that if I had taken down my barriers, God would be waiting there. He would be waiting with open arms. This thought absolutely terrified me. So I was so scared of what my life would look like with God at the center. And then it was June 26th, 2012, and I got the call that upended all my plans and priorities. One of my best friends had gone missing, and I realized what little control I had over anything at all. So for 3 months, we searched for her all over Sacramento, and none of us could understand why a girl who was so full of light and joy and God's love would ever run away. I suddenly realized that all of my priorities were pretty insignificant. My attempts to deal with the situation, to plan the situation, were really futile at best. And any tries to control this life that was falling apart around me just left me feeling guilty, hopeless, and exhausted. I encountered brokenness, suffering, and fear like I had never known before. And when the summer came to a close, we learned that my friend had killed herself the very day she had run away. So it was after all that, at my lowest moment, that God opened my eyes to his centric love in the midst of it all. Just as he was present and alive and at work that summer, he is present and alive and at work in every aspect of my life, showing me how obviously his love spills over into each of the different varied aspects of my life, and really that the whole thing is just very, very connected once I committed to being a disciple of Christ. Now I'm a senior in college. My life might look a lot of the same as it did my freshman year. I still make time for friends. I still go to class. I attend Catalyst every week, like I used to go to church every week with my parents. But I have to say that it is so utterly and completely different with God at my center and his love, spilling over and reaching into and breaking the barriers that I had built between all the different areas of my life. this process, it's been unexpected, and it's been deep, and above all, it's been freeing. With letting go of control and all of my walls, I'm no longer controlled by my parents' expectations, by my friends' expectations, by university and campus culture expectations. And I can finally live and breathe and laugh as God made me, exactly as God made me. Following Jesus these last few years, I have grown not only to accept the person God has made me, but love who he has created me to be, in my strengths and in my weaknesses. So I've changed majors, and I have a new vision for my future that is shaped by the passions that God has gifted me with, and I could not be more excited. I can relate and empathize with my friends in ways that I couldn't or didn't let myself before. And really, I'm no longer afraid to be a friend in faith for them. And I think, honestly, they value me more as a friend because of the person I am in faith. I know that I'm not going to leave Davis full of regrets. I am so grateful for my parents and all that they have given me. And I'm accepting that I am still not athletic and not coordinated. My faith in Christ is still a journey, and I'm still very much in the process. But one thing I tell myself in every aspect of my life, whether it be, going to take a test or having a hard conversation with a friend, going home to see my family for Thanksgiving, I tell myself this verse. It's Proverbs 31:25, and I believe that God has clothed me in strength and dignity, and I can laugh without fear of the future. He makes me free. He makes me fulfilled, and he makes me so very happy right here where I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. I like it. Why don't we just go have a barbecue right now? I'm getting hungry myself. But thank you. I've enjoyed listening to that 3 times. And I hear something a little bit different each time. And I appreciate the honesty and the resilience that your faith has brought you. So thanks for sharing with us. There's a boundary between faith and doubt, and I think we live a lot of times really close to that boundary. What is flying over my face right now? Okay. Get behind me. And I think it's just part of being human, to long toward, to reach out toward faith, something that will fulfill us, that truly is worthy of our trust and our investment. And on the other hand, to wrestle with doubts that constantly bubble up because, of course, we don't know everything, and so we can't answer all the questions, and so we will always live with doubts. Now, if you go deeply into doubt, if your life is dominated by doubt, you'll end up in despair. You don't want to go there. Maybe you have for a season. You can't stay there because you can't live without hope. You can live without a lot of things, but not without hope. So those doubts, if they take over, are a real threat. Faith, on the other hand, if it's faith in someone who is reliable, in someone who deeply cares about you, in someone who does have the answers that you need, that faith, when you pursue it, will lead to a place called courage. And that's where you need to go. The kind of courage that says, and I'm listening to the words of Allison here, I like who I am. I like what God has done with me. And even though I'm not perfect and I have flaws and I'm not all that athletic and coordinated, and not all of us can be. That was a little joke. Okay. That that even though I live with these circumstances, I really do believe that God has intervened in my world and really is the center, and that center holds, and I can handle anything that comes at me. And in fact, I can be that blessing in this world to other people. And as Allison said, my friends, I think, appreciate that. And that's a kind of confidence that doesn't, go into arrogance, but it truly is the kind of healthy confidence that I wish we all had. In fact, part of my calling is to find out what God has done in your life and to see if I can help you as we explore together, draw you into that place where you now not only believe that, but can act on that. So how do you get there? We're doing a series right now called, what is it called? Oh, The Calling is what it's called. And it implies that there is a special call from God to you about your life. There's something that you need to know, that you need to hear, and that you need to live. We're going to go to Matthew chapter 4 to start this series this morning. And by the way, there's a study guide out there that's going to cover all 8 weeks of this series. So would encourage you to grab that study guide. Maybe you're going to use it yourself. You're going to use it in conversation with somebody else or in your small group. That would be terrific. And we're going to start here now with Matthew 4, verse 18. And this is the call that Jesus issues to the original 12 disciples. Excuse me. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. "Come, follow me," Jesus said. "I will make you fishers of men." At once, they left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw 2 other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them. And immediately they left their boat and their father and followed him. Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. News about him spread all over Syria, and people brought to him all who were ill with various diseases, those suffering severe pain, the demon-possessed, those having seizures, and the paralyzed, and he healed them. Large crowds from Galilee, the Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, and the region across the Jordan followed him. It all begins with that simple invitation. It sounds a lot like a command, but it's so compelling, so appealing. It doesn't feel so much like a command that it feels like an opportunity. Follow me, he said. Come to me and follow me. It's a decision you make, but it's also an action you take. Don't divide decision from action. Don't divide belief from obedience. They go together. You don't just decide something and then do nothing about it. And you certainly don't take action without taking the time to reflect on what do I believe about this? What do I know about this? Why would I take this action? Belief and action go together. Faith and follow-up happen together. There's also a core calling here because he wants your heart. He wants you, not just your action, not just your mechanical response of obedience. He wants you. And he wants it to be comprehensive, that it would cover your whole life. It would cover the living room where you live. And so that as you are following him, that is showing up in your living room. It's showing up at work. It's showing up at school. It's showing up where you play. It shows up anywhere you go. As you walk on the street, as you visit someplace you've never been before. As you go in these places, you are very conscious now of following him. It's an absolute command, and they followed immediately. Notice their response. But it's also progressive, because it's one step at a time. They don't know exactly where they're going. They don't have all the answers today. Their maturity is yet years away, truth be told, about these disciples and about all of us. It is an absolute claim on your life, but it's also a progressive experience. One experience, one lesson, one relationship at a time. One new adventure is enough for this day and all the challenges that are related to that. And then it builds. It's cumulative. It's going somewhere. There's a lot of motion in this passage. It talks about Jesus walking around. It talks about a call to follow. It isn't, as we are doing right now, sitting. It isn't about attendance. It isn't about joining the club or joining the church. It's about investing in a movement. It's about an adventure that will last a lifetime for you. This is very, very significant. If you look at all four of the passages, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that talk about this calling, you will see a very rich and very developed kind of picture of what's going on here. Why would they follow? I mean, somebody walks by and says, "Follow me." Are you going to follow? Well, if you put all of this together in this sort of panorama of descriptions from the disciples, you know that first of all, they had been listening to his teaching. They had some sense of what he was about from that. They had seen his miracle, at least one, and it was pretty impressive to them because it had to do with the multiplication of fish. And they knew a lot about fishing and knew that he knew something they didn't know. He was beyond them. They had spent a day with him, according to one of the passages, and spending a day with Jesus can be pretty captivating. And then someone like Peter hears that his name can be changed from Simon, which means little pebble, to Peter, which means rock. You ever wished your name could be changed? And maybe I don't mean your name so much as I mean your reputation, your potential. The kind of impact you can have in this world. To be around somebody who has that kind of capacity to actually take who you are and make it bigger and do something significant with your life so that you make a difference in this world. I want to be around somebody like that. He's talking about the kingdom of God invading my world, invading my living room, invading our space. And if God shows up, you know there's going to be some kind of a power source here. There's going to be some kind of a difference that takes place. I want to be a part of that. So, specifically, what is he calling them to? And therefore, what is he calling us to? What is he calling you to? First of all, the call is simply to be with him. It's about a relationship with him. It's not a call just to a project or sign up for an assignment or, again, join an organization or an institution. No, it's a call to be with him, a call to get to know him in a personal way, a call to an intimate relationship with the living God. That's where it begins. It's a call to experience his love and to know yourself as beloved by God. That's where it begins. Everything else is kind of a detail. It begins with that personal connection, and then everything sort of flows out of that. It's not only a call to be with him, but it's a call to learn about him, because you're going to watch him in action. You're going to see him as, you're going to listen to him as he teaches. You're going to watch the way he treats people, especially all of those difficult people that nobody else seems to know how to deal with. Those people who are sort of outside the acceptable norm. And you're going to learn a lot about him by spending time with him. And then, finally, you're going to become like him, because when you follow him, when you're with him, when this relationship is growing and he's having this impact and he's impressing his character upon you, you can't help but become like him. He's now your model. And he's now the one encouraging you to go in this direction. And as you follow him, you find yourself talking like him, with a kindness in your voice. You find yourself treating people differently. Your prejudices begin to melt away. You find yourself with maybe a little more wisdom because you've watched the way he handles situations, and your own reactivity is no longer enough for you. You want that kind of wisdom. And then he calls us to give what has been given to us and to give it away freely. And here's where some of us, maybe even most of us, get stuck, because I don't know that I have anything. What is it that they need, that the world needs, that the community needs, that my family needs? Well, you have gifts, you have talents, and He wants to use it for His purpose. And He wants to unleash you and these talents upon them. But it isn't just the talent, the skill that you have, as important as that is. It's who you are. It's your personality. Well, really, what about my personality? What are you saying? You saying that I have one? Yeah. You have one. I know it's suppressed a lot of the time. I know that you don't have a lot of confidence yet, right now. But God has a plan to bless other people through you, because of you. That there are people you can reach, and only you can reach, with His love, because He's put you in a strategic place to do that. You're in that relationship. You're in that place. People are next to you. And yes, we build up walls, and yes, we hide behind those walls, and yes, we are discouraged because of messages we've heard in the past that tell us we're not all that. We don't really have that much to offer, and Jesus wants to change all that. This is a revolution going on. You see His disciples, and they're, busy thinking about how it is they can fish the sea every day and get through the day and survive. And Jesus says, those things are good, but I have so much more for you. It's more than just the routine. It's more than just getting through the day. It's more than just surviving. It's more than just getting ahead. It's more than just getting rich. It's more than just getting educated. It's so much more than that. I'm talking about life. And we hear this for the first time and we go, what do you mean? And He says, I'm not going to try to explain it. Come with me. Come follow me. Come watch me. Come interact with me as I'm interacting with the world around. Let me show you what it is God has in mind for this world and for the humanity that He has made, that He has created in His image. And finally, He says, I'm calling you to represent me. That you actually get to bear my name and represent me to other people. In fact, you're going to be calling them to follow me. And the only reason they would even consider doing that is that they see a difference in your life. They see something going on in you and wonder about it and wonder where that comes from. They would like to know more about that. And you and I have that incredible privilege of helping to multiply this movement. But we have to be part of it ourselves first. We have to be on the road going somewhere with Him. That's where it starts. This is an entire reorientation of our lives. And it seems like it's impossible to get here from a place of emptiness, from a place of confusion, from a place of barely making it. The story is called Unbroken, and it was a New York Times bestseller for the last couple of years. Actually, it keeps going on and off the list. And it's now going to be made into a major motion picture. It already is. It'll come out in December. And it's the story of Louis Zamperini, who kind of shows up on the map when he wins a medal at the Olympics in Berlin in 1936. Then he joins the Army, and before there was an Air Force, the Army used to fly the planes, and he became a part of the crew of a bomber, and they went down over the Pacific during the war. And it was wartime, so it's hazardous. And they went down, and only 3 of the crew members survived the crash landing into the ocean, in the middle of nowhere. And they had a raft. And they were on that raft for 47 days. Okay. And they had to survive with their wits and with whatever they could find. They prayed, weren't sure anybody was listening, but there were some fish along with the sharks that they had to fend off. And finally a plane came over, and they waved like crazy to get the attention of this plane flying far overhead. Well, it worked, and the plane came down, but the trouble is it was an enemy plane, and it shot at their raft, and it shot holes in the raft, and they actually had to get out of the raft to patch the raft and fend off the sharks while they're off the raft in the middle of their 47-day ordeal. And during that ordeal, one of them slipped away. There were 2 left, including Louis. After 47 days, they drifted toward an island, and as fate would have it, the island was run by the enemy. And so they were captured and put in a POW camp, and as fate would have it, I'm using the word somewhat ironically and sarcastically now, You couldn't imagine God was in this, and there's nothing about God in the book to this point. He, in fact, became the target of the commandant of the camp, who beat him up virtually every day and taunted him for reasons known best to the commandant, I suppose. After a year, more than a year, that camp was finally liberated, the war was over, and miraculously, somehow, yet again, he survived, and he came home. Isn't that a great story? A story of survival? Somehow survival isn't enough for God. On page 300 and something, Jesus shows up in the book. He has a way of showing up when you least expect it. And he shows up because now suddenly his life is falling apart. What do you mean falling apart? He was on a raft. He got shot down. He was in prison. He was beaten. What do you mean? The story got worse? Yes, it got worse when he went home. Because when he got home, when all this cumulative stress caught up with him, and he began to drink way too much, and his wife couldn't stand to be near him. He adored her, and he drove her away. And now he's alone, and he's drinking too much, and he became suicidal because his life was absolutely empty. He could find no meaning in what he had been through. He was ashamed of some of the things that he had to do to survive, and he didn't have any real friends because it was all about just getting through it himself. And then Jesus showed up. Well, what do you mean? It's a detail, but he showed up because he happened to be walking by an event where his name was being mentioned, and Jesus used that moment to call him to himself. Crazy, I know. Kind of almost embarrassingly old-fashioned in terms of how it happened. But it doesn't matter, because God can use any means he chooses to reach you. And you hear the call. And I wonder if you've heard the call. And he calls you by name. He calls you by name out of the crowd. And he says, yes, I want to be with you, and I want you to be with me. And I want you to follow me. And I will show you what life can be. And a transformation took place in the life of Louis Zamperini, and he gave his heart to Christ. And he gave his whole life to Christ. And he began to represent him to the world around that knew something about, mostly the notoriety of this man's life to that moment. At the age of 97, he died earlier this year, Louis Zamperini. And he died just after collaborating with Angelina Jolie, who is the producer of the movie that's coming out this fall. She's in love with the guy. She loved him immediately and loved the story and picked it up, and this is kind of her life's work, she believes. This is the movie she was born to make. And hopefully it will express everything that I've just said and a lot more that comes through in this man's life, because the change of orientation, of putting together the pieces that were all shattered in his life, that actually helped him reconcile with his wife, his dear wife, who decided that he was worth waiting for, and that gave him a new life and gave him now a voice to represent Christ to the world, is a story that proves again and again and again, as have millions of stories, that this call has real impact to it and really does change a life and really does show this person what they are worth. Because if I'm worth it to God, if he's willing to do all of this to find me, his love claims me. I'm not going anywhere else. I'm not following anybody else. There is no one in the history of the world who has proven his right to call me to follow him. And when I do, what happens? Well, I find out who I am. I belong to him. My primary loyalty is now to him. And I find out what I'm supposed to do. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to go fishing. Well, that was the metaphor he used for fishermen. But he is now going to take my skills and my gifts and what I thought was my calling, and he's going to transform it into something that now makes a difference for the kingdom of God. Well, what is that? The last few verses that we read up there, they followed him as he did those things. And what did he do? Well, he taught in the synagogues, it said. Now, let me just give you a quick translation of what that means. When you teach in the synagogues, that's their, of course, home culture with their background in the Jewish scriptures. He is basically reminding them of what they already know. So he's beginning with a conversation about what people already know. And people already have a lot of wisdom People really do. People are not stupid. And though we're not always honest, when we are honest, there's stuff we already know. Longings in us that we're longing to talk about, dreams that we have, and sometimes our conscience hurts because it's not all well inside of our soul. And we know that we need some help. We know that we need a Savior, though we hate to admit that. And so that's the first conversation, is reminding people of what they already know. And then there's the good news they don't know, the gospel of the kingdom, of how God has intervened. And there is a change that has taken place because God has intervened. And then there's the healing that takes place. And that's a hallmark of the ministry of Jesus. We're talking about physical healing, emotional healing, spiritual healing, relational reconciliation. All sorts of healing is happening. In fact, it's just a summary description here. We're talking about variable needs that people have and severe needs that people have. I don't know if you noticed that word. And the battle between good and evil is raging. And Jesus steps right into that. And his followers are right along there with him. And though you and I are not up for that, it's too much for us. We're not capable. God knows that, and he provides. And by his Spirit, he empowers us. As we follow him, everything else is detail. As we follow him, he uses us even in those circumstances. And he uses us, notice, if we're with Jesus, there's a real mixed crowd that shows up. There are people from Jerusalem. Well, those are the holy people. Those are the scholars. Those are the people of faith. And then there's folks from the Decapolis, the 10 cities. These are Gentiles. These are pagans. These are folks who are outside the belief system of Israel. And he's having an effect among them. And many become followers from there and from across the Jordan. And those are people that really are strange to us. We don't really understand them at all. They are starting to follow Jesus as well. And so this company that felt kind of small, sometimes you get a picture of how big it is. How many people around the world are following. That means we're called, if we're following Jesus, we're called to engage people who are very needy people. Wonderful people, gifted people, at the same time very needy, whose problems often sabotage the beauty that God has put into them. Now, engaging people is part of the call. I like hanging out with Jesus, I have to admit. It's great to hang out with Jesus. I don't always like to hang out with the people he likes to hang out with. My wife and I were on vacation last week, and we were in Disney World in Orlando, the happiest place on earth. But I was in a line that turned into hell for me. And I think hell is standing in lines. This line was 2 hours long to get into a ride that lasted 2 minutes. And I think that's what's going to happen in hell. You're going to be in lines to get into other lines. And it's never ending. So I am not a happy boy in the happiest place on earth. And I'm in line. And I would have gotten out of line, but my wife really wanted to ride, on this ride. She seemed to be very content to be standing in line. She starts talking to the people around us who are part of this family. And I find them completely uninteresting. So I'm irritated and I'm uninterested. And I'm wondering why I'm standing in this line. And my wife's talking to them, and I can kind of see where she's going with their conversations. She's showing that, that she actually cares for this mother and this daughter and this, father-in-law. And I know where she's going with this, but I'm off duty. And this line is long. Did I mention how long this line was? Okay, so I am not in a good mood. I'm not a happy camper. My wife's asking this older man, this father-in-law, this grandfather, who's really an old guy, much older than me, probably a year or two. And every time she asks him a question, he answers it, but he's looking at me. He's talking to me when he answers the question, like I'm in this conversation. I am not in this conversation. Okay, do not bring me into this conversation. And by the way, I find your views completely mistaken and wrong-headed, and I don't agree with anything you're saying. Lord, get me out of here. And the Lord says, no, actually, I put you there. In fact, Doug, I have slowed down the line deliberately to force you to remember who you are and why you're on this earth. You're not here for this ride, believe it or not. You're not here because it's Disney World. You're here because you're my disciple, and I'm slowing down this line so that you can deal with these people. And I'm saying, Lord, please, I have a protest going here. These people are very, very boring people. They're completely, there's problems, obviously, simmering beneath the surface right in front of me. And Jesus says, that's why you're here. Don't you understand what your life is about? Yes, Lord. That's why I'm here. I am here for these people. I am here, and my wife is prompting me to be here for them. And this man who believes everything the opposite of what I believe is exactly the person I'm supposed to be talking to, because Jesus wants to connect with him. And so we had 2 hours of excruciating pain and a surprising amount of blessing in this conversation, with a little hug at the end before we had to hop on the ride, almost forgetting that the time was up and we were there, and it was 2 hours. And what had been agony and misery, my choice to make it that, had now become something totally different because I'm following him. I'm the reluctant follower. Okay? I don't get it as fast as other people. I hope you get it better than I get it. But when I do get it, everything changes. We need to go into communion now because lunch is awaiting us. We got a barbecue coming, and we will have short lines. Unless you need to spend some time talking to somebody in that line, or they need to talk to you. So Jesus gathered his disciples on that fateful night. We're going into communion now, and so we're going to recreate that scene. And these were his disciples, and they were just beginning to understand what it meant to follow him. He was going to a cross very soon. He was calling them to come with him, saying it was all worth it, saying that there was a resurrection at the end of this, that God had a purpose he was fulfilling, and you all get to be a part of that, and I want you with me. But Jesus always takes the initiative. He never calls us to do anything he's not already doing, which is giving himself. And so he takes the bread. And they thought they were just having dinner. They were just, enjoying a Passover supper. He takes the bread and breaks it and says, no, this is my body broken for you. And the cup, he says, this is my blood, the new covenant. This is my sacrifice. I'm about to make this for you. I'm going to give myself to you. I want you to be with me not just now. I want you to be with me forever. And I want you to find in this relationship everything you're looking for and everything you need. So take this and drink it down. Would you pray with me? Before I pray, I just want you to know this invitation is to everyone in this room. If you are ready to follow Jesus, even take the next step in his direction, you are welcome to take this communion, and I think it will even increase your faith to do so. There's nothing magic about it. It has to have meaning to you, but God can put tremendous meaning into it. He already has. This represents the very sacrifice of his Son, of life, a life-giving sacrifice. Dear God, to be there on that night when Jesus handed out these elements, to be with you. And you promise, you are with us right now. And so we are reliving that experience. And so we take the bread and we picture the body, the broken body. And we take the cup and we picture and we even taste the sacrament, the sign of the blood that was shed, the love that was poured out, the life that was given to us because of this sacrifice. And so we thank you. And we don't merely decide to follow you. We will, in fact, follow you. We'll follow you right out of this place into the world you love so much. And we will continue to learn everything we can learn about what it means to walk with Jesus. We pray this in his name. Amen.